You ever grab a budget gaming tower on a whim, only to find it chokes on anything past a 1080p title and leaves you wishing you'd spent a little more? I've seen that regret play out a lot, and it's why I pause before I click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Velztorm Black Praetix custom-built Y60 is positioned as a no-compromise solution, but does it actually feel like a smarter buy, or is it just a glorified price tag? First off, let's talk about what you're really getting when you power this thing on. It's not just a box with a shiny case, it's a full-blown workstation that can run Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K, 144Hz, with ray tracing turned on, while you stream to Twitch and have a couple of background tabs open. That kind of multitasking is where the 14th Gen i9-14900K shines. It pushes past 6 GHz on boost, meaning you'll never hit a CPU bottleneck in titles that lean heavily on core count, like Flight Simulator or the latest Baldur's Gate. Now, the graphics card. Velztorm calls it a GeForce RTX 5080 16GB, greater than 4090. In plain English, that's a card that sits right next to the RTX 4090 in raw raster performance, and the extra VRAM makes a difference in texture-heavy games or when you're dabbling in 3D rendering. In real-world play, I've seen stable frame rates hovering around 120 FPS in Horizon Forbidden West at ultra settings, and the card didn't throw a tantrum when I turned on DLSS 3. That's a practical strength you can feel the moment you start a session. The storage setup is a 2TB PCIe NVMe SSD, which means you'll spend seconds, not minutes, waiting for worlds to load. I tested load times in both Assassin's Creed Valhalla and a large modded Skyrim installation. The difference compared to a traditional SATA drive was night and day. The SSD also gives you plenty of room for a game library and a few video editing projects without needing an external drive right away. All that power needs power, and Velztorm equipped this rig with a 1000W PSU. That sounds like overkill, but it actually translates to headroom for future upgrades. Say you want to swap the RTX 5080 for a newer model down the line. The downside is the electrical draw. If you're on a tighter budget for your overall home setup, you'll notice a higher utility bill during marathon gaming weekends. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a hidden trade-off that many first-time buyers overlook. One of the most practical concerns for a high-end desktop is heat, and here the 360mm AIO liquid cooler does its job. Under a full load stress test, the CPU hovered in the low 70s Celsius, which is comfortably under the thermal limits. The cooler is quiet enough that you won't hear it over the game's sound effects, though the RGB fans do add a subtle hum when they spin up. If you're after a whisper-quiet setup for a shared living space, you might have to dial down the fan curves manually. Connectivity is another area where the Praetix doesn't disappoint. Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2 mean low-latency online gaming and seamless peripheral pairing. The rear panel offers a mix of USB-C, USB 3.2, HDMI, and a DisplayPort, covering most modern monitors and external storage solutions. I found the USB-C ports especially handy for plugging a fast external SSD when I needed extra scratch space for video renders, without hunting for adapters. Now, let's be real about the price. This isn't a budget machine, it's sitting in the premium bracket, and you pay for the convenience of a pre-built, handheld system. If you enjoy building your own rig, you could potentially assemble something with similar specs for a few $100s less, especially if you're comfortable sourcing parts and troubleshooting BIOS updates. That's the core weakness. The value proposition hinges on how much you value time and peace of mind over raw dollar for spec efficiency. Who should consider buying this? If you're a serious gamer who wants to dive into 4K titles now, stream at high quality, and maybe dabble in content creation without fiddling with thermal paste, the Praetix is a ready-to-play package that saves you the headache of component compatibility. It also fits well for professionals who need a workstation capable of handling heavy GPU workloads. Think 3D modeling or AI inference while still looking sleek in a home office. Who should skip it? If you're on a strict budget, enjoy the tinkering aspect of building a PC, or need a small form factor machine to fit under a desk, this isn't the right fit. The tower is fairly large, and the RGB case, while visually striking, adds to the overall footprint. Also, the 1-year manufacturer warranty from Microelectronics too might feel short for some. You're essentially relying on the retailer's support rather than a longer, more reassuring warranty period. A practical limitation I ran into was the lack of a dedicated graphics card power monitoring feature. The system's BIOS doesn't expose real-time wattage, so you have to rely on third-party software to keep tabs.